Florida State's first official depth chart. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. Speaking of get started, Florida State's first game will be this next Saturday. We are less than a week away. And Mike Norvell and the Noles, they kicked off the whole week of game preparation and all the information with a depth chart. We're going to break that down and also talk about Norvell's press conference. But first, let's talk a little bit about the offense. Then we'll move into the defense. A few surprises, a few extra thoughts I want to add on it, on how these depth charts work at the beginning of the year, which, by the way, Florida State is not like every school. Not all schools will hand these out, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Start off with the quarterback position, just get it out of the way. Yes, no surprise here. DJ is the quarterback for the Florida State Seminoles. Not surprising, Brock Gwynn, the sophomore / redshirt freshman, really. He only played in a handful of games, so he will have 4 years of eligibility, is next. And then Luke Krumhawk, the freshman out of the Savannah area. The next position, though, is the one that's really interesting. And Florida State, the way they list their depth chart is intriguing to me. You can take it however you want. I'm not sure if this is a combination of trying to keep everybody happy, which that's always a part, I guess, or if they're just trying to really show that they're going to run a lot of two-back sets. But they literally have two running back positions, and it's a kind of a bigger back and a smaller back kind of deal. So let's just start with the order that they have it. The bigger backs, they got Rodell. He's a transfer from Bama. He's listed at 214 pounds. Next is Keziah Holmes, and then Cam Davis, the freshman. I'm really, really interested to see if they do a lot of the two-back stuff, because you could do a buck sweep or anything like that off some of these actions where running back powers, and every now and then maybe DJ takes a bootleg, like with a buck sweep or something like that, and scoots out the backside. But he's going to be blocking or they're going to be blocking for some of the smaller guys if this works out. But Lawrence Toffoli's the number one. The Jalen Lucas, the speedster, really twitchy guy that transferred from Indiana, originally from the state of Louisiana. And then Sam Singleton Jr., the redshirt freshman from over in Fleming Island, just outside of Jacksonville. So are they really going to mix and match to the point where they're playing a lot of two backs? I don't know, but they literally do have that on the depth chart. I find that interesting. I'm not surprised about the order. It pretty much reads like who's got the most experience. It's about as conservative depth chart as you can get in that regard, but not really surprising about the guys either based on what Norvell has said during the press conferences. We'll talk a little more about that in a bit. Receiver, this one surprised me a little bit. I'm not surprised that Malik Benson's starting. That's the easy one. But I thought, just my gut is that Hakeem would end up being a starter. Instead, he's listed at the same spot as Benson. So I'm a little confused. I don't know how that's going to work. Are they going to move Hakeem around quite a bit? That's a guy they absolutely need to get ready for the middle to end of this season, as well as next year. Like next year, he could be their number one. But right now, he's behind, or at least it's one of those or deals on the depth chart. I'm sure you've seen these. Kentron is the second guy, or Hakeem Williams. How does that work? I don't know. I'm not sure why coaches do it other than to try to keep players happy. We'll see. The other outside spot, this is the good development that I'm very happy to see. Jalen Brown is listed as the starter, and he's a redshirt freshman that can fly. Absolute track kid. So you got two speedsters along with Benson, with Brown there. That's a lot of speed. So Florida State, I knew they were going to throw deep this year. Having those two, that pretty much solidifies it. Next is Darion Williamson, and then Wayne McCoy, the freshman. So again, kind of a experience deal, but Brown passes Darion Williamson. So that's interesting. Not a lot of that on this depth chart, but he's a redshirt freshman because he played just a teeny bit last year at LSU. Next, the slot position. Everybody thought Ja'Kai was going to start. That's where he's at. redshirt senior. Another redshirt senior is right behind him in Deuce Spann, and then Elijah Moore. This one's a little surprising me on how they did it. I'm not surprised Moore's on the depth chart, but they got him at slot. Now, you can rank this any way you want, but that's at least how I'm taking it. They listed as receiver. I assume they're playing Shakir in the slot. I can't imagine him playing anywhere else. He's not the biggest guy in the world because he's 5'9", 195. But Deuce, I mean, that's a big guy. He's 208 pounds, and Elijah's 204 pounds. Totally different body types. It's kind of interesting. Are they going to move him around? Again, that's the question. I think Jakai's a slot. That's where he belongs. You could move him outside in bunch formations and do some other things, but he's not the biggest guy in the world, so I doubt he does that much. I'm curious to see how much they rotate in. Do they give Deuce Spann, who's got a lot of talent, a chance to rotate in a bunch, or is it Jakai going to be like 70% of the reps? That's one of the questions that I have. Tight end, Kyle Morlock is the starter. No shock, the redshirt senior. They've got two guys with the OR tag again, Brian Courtney, Jackson West coming in next. I knew they would both play. Which one ends up being the quote-unquote more likely to be the backup or the H-back, that's going to get complex. I could do a whole show on that. Whichever guy blocks the best this week in practice and up to this point will probably play more, especially if they're going to try to play power football with Georgia Tech, which I know I would. For those of you who don't know, 221 yards a game, that's what Georgia Tech gave up last year. You have to run the football at them. Before we go into the offensive tackles, just note with the skill guys in general, Florida State's in a good spot. You got more speed and more size, especially at running back. They're very deep based on having two running back positions. Most schools don't do that. And they're also a school that has diversity with their skill guys. I mean, if you wanted to, Ja'Kai Douglas could probably play a little running back for you. Certainly would be very difficult to tackle out of the backfield, kind of like Jalen Lucas. I think they're in many ways very interchangeable. And that is a theme for this group. Overall, they have a lot of speed, and that's going to be a very big part of it. They use that, and then you bring in somebody like Rodell to be a hammer. Maybe he's a lead blocker. They have so much versatility with their skill. It's a great sign for Florida State this year. I know I'm still a little nervous about the receiver position, and many of you probably are too, but you got to play the games to find out, so I'm just to that point. Let's see how they do. Georgia Tech's secondary isn't terrible, but at the same time, teams ran the ball on them so much. I don't know how much their secondary is capable of carrying the load if a team really comes at them and just tries to throw the football. Not many teams did. They didn't have to. So Florida State, maybe they challenge them a little more. You never know. So that's something to think about. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the offensive line and then move into the defense here on Locked On Seminoles. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we're having something a little different for you. Now through the 22nd of September, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you have to do is go to Google account and use a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Thank you very much for checking out Locked On Seminoles once again. I appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with us. This is a really good thing for me. I enjoy doing this, and especially with college football season getting going. It's a lot of fun. Let's also talk a little bit about the college football preview that we got on Locked On College Football right here on the Locked On Network. It's going to be a lot of action with a preview coming up from all the different teams in the ACC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC. Myself and everybody else have picked in or been chosen to help out with this, and it's a lot of fun. Monday all the way through the end of the week, you're going to have that opportunity to check it out all the way into the early season. So once again, check out Locked On College Football. It's a big part of what's going on here at the Locked On Network, and you can see it on the YouTube channel, on Amazon Fire TV. It's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. So back in with the depth chart discussion, the offensive line had a couple of spots that I was a little surprised about, but the main ones probably aren't going to surprise anybody. And it's going from left tackle to right tackle. This is where we're at. Darius Washington is going to be the starter. He's the redshirt senior. He's the longtime developmental player in the program that's earned his spot, listed at 6'4", 310. Lucas Simmons, the redshirt freshman, the highly coveted kid. That young man's got a chance to be really good. He is the backup as a redshirt freshman, 6'8", 308 pounds. Left guard, transfer Richie Leonard from Florida, 6'2", 331. He's a senior. The backup is Bryson Estes, 6'3", 285-pound redshirt junior. Center, Big Mo at center, once again, 6'3", 298. You got Andre Otto and Jacob Rizzi as the backups. Moving over to right guard, this is where it gets interesting on the right side. I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know if they're going to rotate. I don't know if there's a definitive order. Take it for what it's worth. It's with one of the or tags here, Keandre Jones or TJ Ferguson, the young man that transferred in from the University of Georgia. Keandre's played some. He's a power player, strong guy. TJ, same kind of deal. They're both 330-plus pounds. Let's just see how that goes. I'm not sure if there's a battle still brewing or if they're really just going to rotate him. Again, Florida State's got a deep depth chart at O-line. Maybe it just works out that way. They can play both. It would be good to have that for the playoff situation later in the year. Finally, at right tackle, Jeremiah Bowers is listed as a starter, but it's listed with an or again. Robert Scott Jr., both of them redshirt seniors. Let's see how that goes. Jalen Early is listed as the tackle on that side. He's a redshirt sophomore. So Florida State has a different kind of deal than most schools here. It's a good problem to have. They got more talent than they do spots. Most schools are lucky to fill out the depth chart. So keep that in mind. I think Florida State's in a pretty good situation on the offensive line, not only this year, but they're probably a little deeper than I originally thought too. Let's move over to defense. No surprise here, my personal ACC pick to win Defensive Player of the Year. It starts it off. Defensive end, Patrick Payton, 6'5", 250, redshirt junior. I expect this to be his last year of college football before he heads to the draft. He's a really good player. Wallahia, the transfer in from Oregon State, he's the backup. That's a great player to have on your edge as a reserve. He's a fifth-year guy, really good football player, so he comes over with DJ Uyunglele. D-tackle, a little surprise, not a ton, but a little surprise. Farmer is the starter, but they got KJ Sampson and I'm not going to pronounce this right, Duroweje, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, the kid that transferred in. Big kid. They got size finally at D-tackle with KJ, and the other young man's the smallest one at 280 pounds, and he's a redshirt sophomore. So KJ's a redshirt freshman, and then you got a redshirt sophomore backing up Joshua Farmer. So they're in a pretty good spot. Daryl Jackson Jr., he's the guy I've been really excited to hear about, get any piece of information I can. Redshirt junior, he's from the area, played high school ball with Farmer. 6'5", 330. He's my pick to be the key guy on the defense this year if they're going to make a deep run, get to the playoff and do something, because you just can't teach his athleticism at that size. Behind him, Daniel Lyons, who's somebody that Norvell mentioned in his press conference, went out of his way. That's a good sign. He's 6'4", 294, redshirt sophomore, or Grady Kelly, the kid that came over from Colorado State. They've got more depth and experience there than I expected. And by the way, Kelly's up to 295, so good for him. He's listed as a red shirt junior. The other defensive end is Marvin Jones Jr. No shock. Transfer in from the University of Georgia. He is a junior. Byron Turner Jr. at 6'4", 251. Redshirt junior out of New Orleans is the backup. I expect Jones to take the majority of snaps in the big games, but having a guy that's a redshirt junior like Byron coming off the bench, pretty nice. Linebacker. This one is probably a work in progress as much as any spot on the roster. Cam Riley transfers in from Auburn, experienced player, big guy, 6'4", 6'5", 237. Or Blake Nicholson, the sophomore out of California, 225-pound kid, got some size to him, but he can really run. How much are they going to give the young guy a chance against Georgia Tech? Nicholson will be one of the guys I'm watching. DeMarco Ward is the redshirt freshman that is next on the depth chart. DJ Lundy, the surefire starter, 6'1", 240, redshirt senior. Omar Graham and then Justin Cryer are the backups. There's no one of those or tabs between those two. I think they'll both be good players, but let's see how far they get with them. Then we go on to the secondary. Kevin Knowles, Earl Little, they're listed with the or. How does that work out? I don't know. I thought Little would be the definitive starter because he's such a good coverage guy, or at least that's what I've heard. But we need to see it. So we'll find out against Georgia Tech because they're going to sling it. They'll both have their chances to play some defense. Jabril Rawls is listed as a nickel as well. Kind of interesting because I thought he would play corner, but they moved him inside. He's a redshirt freshman. On the outside, you got cornerback Ventrell Cypress. No shock. He is a redshirt senior. He's a former transfer from the University of Virginia. Quindarius Jones is his backup along with Kai Bates, the true freshman. Like to see the freshman in there. That's a good sign. Shaheem Brown is your buck, meaning he's your strong safety. He's the returning player that most people are really looking forward to, 6'2", 208. I think he's going to have a big year. KJ Kirkland, redshirt freshman. He's a kid out of Jacksonville Reigns. I'm really high on him too. Devontae Brown, the transfer from Miami via UCF, gets a free safety start, possibly, depending on how you want to read this, because there's another one of those or tags. Conrad Hussey, the sophomore out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale, he is listed as a co-starter with Devontae. And at corner, Azariah Thomas, the starter, the junior. He's out of Niceville, Florida. Edwin Joseph, a kid who played down there at Chaminade Madonna, redshirt freshman, or Charles Wester III, the freshman out of Venice, Florida, breaks down the rest of the depth chart. Now, the defense in general, just looking at it, all the ors, this doesn't surprise me because so many kids we knew were good. In spring ball, we heard about it. In fall camp, we heard about it. And in between, even in the summer, we heard about it. Guys making plays. Like Elijah Moore's on the offensive depth chart. He earned some credit in the summer. We knew that going into fall. It's no different. Conrad Hussey, the kid that's a sophomore out of St. Thomas Aquinas, I knew he was going to be a player. How they use him, I still think he'll play multiple spots and be a good special teams guy. Not surprised that he's up there on the depth chart. And that leads to the final point I want to talk about today, and that's Norvell's press conference. It kind of confirms some of the things that we've been seeing with all the news coming out of the camp and then the depth chart itself. We're going to talk about that next to wrap up the show here on Locked On Seminoles. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Now go check out my friend Spencer McLaughlin over at Locked On College Football. From NIL to all the things going on with conference realignment, Florida State included, Spencer will get you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can go find on Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Norvell's press conference to kind of wrap up the show today. This is about solidifying what the depth chart is about, what I think about it. I'll add a few extra things as well, but mostly with this, it's just him taking questions and he was pretty candid, pretty excited today, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to give a few timestamps and some of the things that I noticed. I listened to over 10 minutes of it. And to be honest, I was like, I wish I had that man's energy. All right, first thing. All focus on the Seminoles. That's a quote he gave. Somebody asked him about how you're preparing for Georgia Tech, etc. One of the very first comments, somewhere around the 2-minute mark. The most important thing, all focus on the Seminoles. So while we respect our opponent, which he should say, Norvell is going out of his way to bring up, we need to work on us. If we take care of what we do, we will be fine. I like that approach. If you don't execute your game plans in general, you can't fine-tune them for the teams that you're playing. In other words, finish out the depth chart, make sure everything's good to go, all the little things, the transition, the communication from punt team to defense, from punt return team to offense, all the little things. That's what this is about. I'm glad he said that because it's not given enough credit. All the little stuff in football that will make you look bad and after a game only is talked about if it is bad. If it goes good, nobody talks about it. Florida State is doing the right way with what Norvell said. Next, 240 mark, the most explosive group. That's something to look at. Like he was talking about the times they run. They've got these vests that give it out the speeds, how fast they're running, like 20 some mile an hour. He said he's had some of the fastest times that he's had anywhere, the fastest at Florida State. He's really happy about it. He was really shocked in a way, like the look on his face, like just how many. Like their strength and conditioning programs getting it done, and they're recruiting guys that can run too. That's a great sign. They've got good strength numbers. That's a good sign overall for the Florida State Seminoles. Something interesting, and I'd forgotten about this, Alex Atkinson, because of the suspension with the recruiting violation last summer, whatever it was, or in the winter with the TJ Ferguson thing or whoever it was, he's not going to be coaching. Norvell went out of the way to say this game, he's not coaching this game. They've been preparing for a while. They're going to have other guys step in and take it over. He's not worried about it, but I assume this will be a very non-important factor because they prepared. Again, Norvell does a great job of preparation and the staff. It sucks that Atkinson can't coach, but he's not going to be there on game day. All right, 445 mark. He talked a little bit about the defensive coordinator that came over to Georgia Tech from Duke. Duke was pretty good defense last year. Very physical, very consistent with the run gap fits, etc. But I don't know if they're going to adjust that much based on the personnel they have at Georgia Tech. This is a first game. Norvell gave a lot of respect to him, and he's talked about the personnel and fits and stuff like that in the fronts. He's like, you don't know for sure. And he's 100% right. That would scare me because they have carte blanche. The only thing you can do, and he said this, is look at the Duke film. You're guessing. That's always dangerous. If they can come up with something that Georgia Tech is comfortable with to run to surprise you, they might stall a drive or two in addition to the rest of the game, what they might have done just by schematics. It's part of a first game. You got to be ready. He also brought up first game surprises in general. He's like personnel or anything else. So don't be surprised guys move around for Georgia. Not the player, but where they're lined up, etc. The coaching question, by the way, for Tech is Tyler Santucci. He was at Texas A&M. I believe he was at Notre Dame at one point. He's a grad assistant, etc. He's been around some pretty good coaches. Mike Elko was a good guy to learn under. Just for the numbers, last year, Duke, they were 19th in total defense, gave up 19 points per game. That's 16th. They gave up 141.9 yards, 47th in rushing, and passing 210.8. That's 41st. So they were solid, but the number of scoring is pretty good. I think that's because of their red zone defense. When the field got condensed, again, they didn't make mental errors. They gave up very few big plays and busts down near their own end. That's the difference between winning and losing. That's why Duke was a pretty good team last year. At the 6-minute mark, special teams. This is something that's not discussed as much. And again, I brought this back up a few minutes ago. All focus on the Seminoles. That's the same deal here. Special teams, a very critical factor for us. That's a quote from Norvell. 100%. You are not going to win unless you have good special teams as a season. But in an opening game, especially, if you want to blow a game, have a punt blocked. If you want to blow a game, watch a kickoff go the other direction for 95 yards and a score. Something like that can change a football game in a heartbeat. No way around it. Now, the good news, Mastromano and just the coverage units in general, I don't have any qualms with what they did last year because it was top 10 units. Kind of impossible, but I haven't heard anything different this year. There's pretty high expectations. So maybe this is the area Florida State actually has the biggest edge. Having a punter like that's great. But even just getting one extra possession where Georgia Tech is backed up, remember now, the quarterback for Georgia Tech threw 16 picks last year. He's definitely a guy that can throw it to the wrong team. If you back him up a few times, it's not out of the question Florida State not only gets a pick, they get a pick 6. Don't discount that happening. It's very possible. Finally, here, 2 more categories. He talked a lot about the offensive line and the transformation from where they were when he got there to like where they are now, the depth that's built over the last couple of seasons. Well said. They've done a great job of getting guys to buy in and not transfer out. I thought they were going to have a bunch of guys leave after this last season or go to the NFL. Like almost all of them came back. They're not going to do that if they don't like Atkinson, they don't like Norvell, they don't like the program, the strength staff. Great job by all parties involved. This is one of the deepest Florida State offensive lines ever. Enjoy it because not every college football team has it. Florida State has it this year. They need to run over some people, and I think they will. Finally, the last thing that I paid attention to, a reporter asked Norvell which guys made strides like from spring to now. And it was a diatribe of long proportions. Not really diatribe, but it was just such a long list. You could tell he was going out of his way not to forget anybody because he didn't want to make anybody mad. But even mentioned Azariah Thomas, like the first guy. And that's somebody who was almost like a co-starter at the end, but was really good at corner. And then he just went through all kinds of guys. Conrad Hussey, talked about offensive guys all across the board, that how he's just happy with the guys getting better. That's something Norvell talks about, win the day and get a little better today. Let's have a great day. Very positive man. I think this kind of buys into that as well. And his players have also bought in. He mentioned too many guys from eating remotely count. I stopped. But that's a good sign for the program overall. Florida State players want to be there. They want to be a Nole, and they want to win as a Nole. Can't really argue with that. So I'm pretty excited to see what the energy level is for Florida State against Georgia Tech, because Norvell, again, was really, really happy overall. And that last part right there kind of signifies that. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Please hit that notification bell and that like button. Subscribe to this podcast, rate and review. Truly appreciate you coming in to talk some Noles with me. It's a lot of fun. And before I get out of here, make sure that you also make Locked On College Football Podcast your next listen. It's a great one. Check out my guy, Spencer McLaughlin. He does a great job over there. Everybody have a good one. I will see you all this week talking Noles, talking depth charts, talking breakdowns, player matchups, Georgia Tech, Florida State coming up this next Saturday.